the Seek and Understand the Truth program. And today we are looking at the application of the Bible in the contemporary age, part 1. I want you to pay attention, take your notes as it is necessary, and then when it is time for why are we doing this? We are doing this simply because we see the Bible as a book that is very relevant for so many disciplines and also in different areas. The Bible is the only book that by far addresses every discipline, every subject, and every area of human endeavor. So it will be very important and relevant that you and I understand the Bible in the context of the contemporary age that we find ourselves in. In the first lecture, I talked about the whole Bible, and we looked at the general overview of the Bible. You are welcome to the Seek and Understand the Truth program. And today we are looking at the application of the Bible in the contemporary age. And this is lecture 4. Application of the Bible in the contemporary age, part 1. I want you to pay attention, take your notes as it is necessary, and then when it is time for you to ask questions, you can then go ahead and ask your questions. Today we'll be looking at the whole Bible in the context of the contemporary age. Why are we doing this? We are doing this simply because we see the Bible as a book that is very relevant for so many disciplines and also in different areas. The Bible is the only book that by far addresses every discipline, every subject, and every area of human endeavor. So it will be very important and relevant that you and I understand the Bible in the context of the contemporary age that we find ourselves in. In the first lecture, I talked about the whole Bible, and we looked at the general overview of the Bible in relations to ethics and the theology. But this particular lecture seeks to address the application of the Bible in the context of the contemporary age. A brief background of the application of the Bible. In fact, when we talk about the Bible is a book full of different texts which become relevant when they are looked at in context. So a scholar said that a text without context is only a pretext. It is true that the Bible is the only book that touches on every area in human life. First, the Bible is seen as a history book. So if you will be a good student of the use of the Bible, you have to understand the historicity of the Bible. Bible is also a geographical book. And so, if you would be able to understand what role the Bible has to play in your life, you need to be a good student of the Bible in the context of geography. By geography, I'm talking about locations, chronology, and timelines. The Bible is also a very good cultural book. That is to mean that it hinges or touches around the culture of a human society. So the Bible as a culture book addresses language, socialization, norms, ethics, value systems, belief systems, worldviews, and doctrine. The Bible is also a book of information. So simply put, it is a book that has a set of knowledge. So if someone is reading the Bible, he may approach the Bible from a knowledge perspective. Then the Bible is also ultimately a spiritual book. So the Bible becomes relevant in a context of history, the context of geography, in the context of culture, in the context of knowledge, and in the context of spirituality. The Bible as a book encompasses every other subject, every discipline that you can find in any human setting is certainly addressed by the Bible. There are certain ideologies in philosophy or sociology and in science that tends to oppose the validity and the strength of the Bible. We'll, however, consider a few of these terms. One of it is what we call Gnosticism. Gnosticism is simply using knowledge to disprove the authenticity and the originality of the Bible. A Gnostic is someone who actually upholds to his point or his perspective or perception about an issue by employing the strength or the help of knowledge. There is also the skepticism. That is talking about skepticism. Skepticism is to simply deny that something is not true because you do not have enough proofs. So when somebody gets up and says, I do not accept this particular verdict because of the lack of proofs, we say that that person is delving into skepticism. We have terms like formalism. Formalism is the term that addresses the mindset that anything that is true with scripture or the text of the Bible, it must take a certain form. If it does not represent or reflect a form, then it is irrelevant. There are, however, many other concepts and theories that tend to fight or oppose the authenticity of the Bible. When you have an absolute overview of the Bible, you will come to accept that the Bible touches on every other subject. You will have science being talked about or being addressed by the Bible. You have mathematics, you have physics, you have biology, chemistry, you have arts, you have sociology, geography, and what have you, all being addressed in the Bible. When someone upholds to the teachings of the Bible, the person is directly or indirectly touching on some of these subject areas that I've mentioned a few. One very important thing that you need to know as we are addressing the application of the Bible in the context of our contemporary age is that many people are of the view that the Bible is a Western book. But that is totally untrue. The Bible is absolutely an Eastern book. To be able to understand the Bible thoroughly, you need first the Holy Spirit, second, background, third, foundations, fourth, language, and then the faith, the people or the society within which the Bible evolved. So the Bible must be seen as an Eastern book. Other than that, we will do a lot of disservice to the transposition and the transcription and the translation of the Bible as a book. The Bible touches on every area of human life. You find anatomy addressed in there. You find the economy addressed in there. You find spirituality addressed in there. You find things that have to do with health. The common or the mundane life of a man are all addressed in the tenets of the Bible. I am yet to discover any subject that the Bible does not address. There are, however, 4 basic systems that you and I have to understand that the Bible actually encompasses. Bringing these 4 systems together is what we know as phenomenology. Phenomenology simply is the study of a religion when one brackets himself off any other religion, any other information he has received about the religion, and then gets himself involved in the day-to-day tenets and rituals or practices or the form of worship of a particular religion. Phenomenology actually seeks to address whether a particular faith or form of worship is authentic or not. Now, if you will follow the rules and the steps of phenomenology, you will agree with me that every religion is relevant and important. What are the 4 steps or factors that contribute to phenomenology? The first one is what we call doctrinal view. The Bible is a book with a set of doctrines. There are a lot of teachings and accepted concepts and ways of practices that the Bible actually endorses, and there are others that the Bible is not clear on, and there are others that the Bible is absolutely clear when it comes to those matters. The second point is what we call a value system. The Bible gives us a means of creating value. Any information you get from the Bible gives you a certain mindset that helps you to appreciate how to relate with others, how to accept what is done to you, and be able to move forward and accomplish your targets and your goals. We call that the worldview, the value system factor of phenomenology. There is also what we call the belief system. Take it or leave it. Physically identify with a particular belief system or not, every human being has a certain belief system. Your belief system is most of the time defined by the information that you have received, the encounters you have had, and the exposure that you have come to. Belief system. The 4th factor of phenomenology is what we call the worldview. Everybody or individual has a certain way of viewing the world. To the scientist, the world is a piece of study object. To the one in arts, the world is simply an object that must seem evolving now and then. The fourth factor of phenomenology is the worldview. What is your worldview? What view do you have of the world? Now, all these four factors that we are considering, the worldview, belief system, value system, and doctrinal view, they come together to contribute to the phenomenology of the Bible. Now let us look into the Bible under two specific categories. I will look at the Bible from the cultural setting, and I will look at the Bible from the timeline setting. When we talk about the culture of a people, it is simply the science that looks into the way the people behave, the way the people live, and the way the people accept certain codes of conduct in life. So culture is simply how a people grouped in a place who accept commonality by blood or by relations or by work under the setting of their attitude, their belief system, their doctrinal system, and the codes that are applicable or practical in their setting. The Bible is the sole authority for cultural practices. There are many cultural practices that do not have any background or do not have any endorsement in the Bible. But if you do further studies, you come to the point where you see that whether the Bible physically or directly talks about certain cultural practices or not, the Bible has a certain verdict or a certain position as far as a cultural practice is concerned. The food that a people group eat add to the spiritual adds to the phenomenology of the culture of the people. There are certain belief systems that also contribute to the culture of a people group. The language, the tribes, or ethnicity also goes a long way to add to the culture of a people group. So in considering the Bible as a cultural book, we are looking at the way and the life of a people group in relation to the character or the authority of the Bible. The second heading that we look at the Bible is the timeline. If you want to be a good student of the Bible, you need to be a student of timelines. By this, I'm talking about chronology. The Bible carries the most up-to-date records of events in times past, events in times present, and events in time future. If someone wants to understand the Bible, the person must be familiar with the timelines that are within the confines of the Bible. There are certain things that the Bible addresses that we are going to look at. The Bible focuses more on doctrine. The Bible focuses more on concepts. And the Bible focuses more on dispensations. I want to look into the concept of dispensations. Sometimes you have people who are trying to explain the Bible and apply what the Bible is teaching in the context of our contemporary world. A lot of the times we have challenges doing that because people are not adequately informed or properly informed in terms of the chronology or the timeline of the Bible. There are many people who communicate the Bible so wrongly because they are defunct when it comes to the areas where the Bible is very clear on and the areas where the Bible is not clear on. To be able to understand the Bible and teach or defend it, you must be a good student of dispensationalism. What is dispensationalism? Dispensationalism is categorizing stages of the Bible, periods of the Bible, all under timelines. Let us look into the theological sound teaching of dispensationalism as far as the Bible is concerned. When you break the Bible into dispensationalism, you come into or come under 7 different headings of subjects. Number 1, when we talk about dispensations, there is what is known in the Bible as the dispensation of innocence. 2, the dispensation of conscience. 3, the dispensation of human government. 4, the dispensation of promise. 5, the dispensation of the law. 6, the dispensation of grace. And then 7, the dispensation of final things, or the dispensation of the kingdom age. I will recommend that you take your time and then you go into details on the subject of dispensationalism in relation to the Bible. But I would like to touch on a few things as far as dispensationalism are concerned. When you break the Bible into dispensationalism, these are the timelines that you must see. The age of innocence begins from Genesis chapter 1, from the verse number 1, all the way to Genesis chapter 3, the verse number 1. This is the dispensation of innocence. Before the fall of man, before sin came into the world, before our world lost glory and was added to the beings or creations of no glory, there was the dispensation of innocence. And the dispensation of innocence is simply the timeline or the period when man on earth knew nothing apart from that which he has been told, apart from that which he has learned. The dispensation of innocence ended the very day or time or moment that Adam and Eve ate from the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. When they engaged in the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, they ended the dispensation of innocence and started with the dispensation of conscience. I must state clearly that there are so many schools of thought regarding this subject that we are discussing. There are those that actually subscribe to the angelic age, and they add the angelic age to the 7 dispensations, making it 8 dispensations. But strictly from the Bible, you do not see any other dispensation being talked about or being addressed apart from the dispensation of innocence, conscience, human government, promise, law, grace, and the kingdom age. If there is anything that the Bible actually speaks more authoritatively on, as far as dispensationalism is concerned, then it is in the categorization of the timelines. So I have already spoken to you about the dispensation of innocence. The second dispensation that began right after the dispensation of innocence is the dispensation of conscience. Mind you, according to Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth, and then he created a beautiful garden called Eden, and he put man in the garden. He gave man a set of rules and laws. Of all the trees in the garden you may eat, except the one in the middle of the garden. And the one in the middle of the garden was known as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There are many people who have postulated certain theories on the concepts of the Bible regarding this tree. Some teach what we call the Serpentine doctrine. The Serpentine doctrine is actually the doctrine that promotes a carnal knowledge or an intimate sexual affairs between the serpent mentioned in Genesis chapter 3 and Eve. By the Serpentine doctrine, the people who push or herald this doctrine actually say that there was a form of sexual intercourse or carnal knowledge that happened between Eve and the serpent. Is this true? I will leave you to make your own judgment. The dispensation of conscience began the very moment that Adam ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The Bible says that immediately they ate, their eyes opened, and they saw their nakedness. This is the concept or dispensation that seeks to promote conscience or discernment as the main attribute of a particular age. As we considering dispensationalism, we are also bringing to your understanding or bear for you to understand that by the time we end with the last dispensation, we would have gone through the chronology of the timelines in the Bible. The dispensation of conscience gave way to the dispensation of human government. The dispensation of conscience started from when the man ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it ended at when man began to rule man. That is speaking of Genesis chapter 10 and chapter 11. Man started ruling man when man started walking away from illumination and revelation. I have already told you that the Bible is an Eastern book. And so if we can understand the Bible clearly, we need to be able to come to the point where we lay hold on the grace, where we lay hold on the foundation of the Bible as an Eastern book. The Bible postulates that the dispensation of conscience gave way to the dispensation of human government. A brief look at the dispensation of human government. If you are considering human government, it spans from the period when this man by the name Nimrod was actually in charge of the earth. It is believed, according to Genesis chapter number 10 and chapter number 11, that he was a mighty hunter. He was a great hunter who hunted anything that came his way. He was also into spiritism, and he was also into a practice that later on became known as the religion of the Chaldeans or the Babylonian cult practices. The dispensation of government ended when God decided to show himself to mankind by calling Abraham, revealing himself to him through a set of instructions that he gave to him, and then Abraham began to follow suit. The dispensation of government ended when Abraham was called by God to begin another dispensation. Now I want you to take note that in considering timelines and dispensationalism, we are going to look at the 4 factors that contribute to the phenomenology of the Bible in relation to the dispensationalism also that prevails in the Bible. When you look at the dispensation of innocence, there are many things that are peculiar to that dispensation, which are unique from the dispensation of conscience, which are also unique from the dispensation of human government. After the dispensation of human government, we have the dispensation of promise, which I did mention began with Abraham. Abraham was actually believed to have been the father of all religions. Abraham's teachings and his lifestyle and the way he carried himself about actually gave credence to most of the well-known world religions. Talk about Shinto, talk about Krishna, talk about Confucianism, talk about Ebionism, talk about Baha'ism, talk about Christianity, talk about Islam, talk about yoga, and what have you. They all span from the relationship and the encounter that God had with Abraham. From the dispensation of promise, we see a new dispensation popping up, and that was the dispensation of the law. A brief bit about the dispensation of promise. God called Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, and then he gives him a set of instructions. Come out of your family, come out of your father's house, come out of your kindred, from your nation, and go to the place that I will show you. History makes us to understand that with this encounter, Abraham just moved out and he began to pursue the place that God had promised him. The dispensation of promise is characterized by God's promise that he gave to Abraham, that out of him shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because the seed was unto Abraham and no other person. From the 5th point, we are introduced to the dispensation of the law. So after the dispensation of promise, and the end of the dispensation of promise, we have the dispensation of the law. So up until this time, the dispensation of the law did not have any hold. The law did not have any control. The law could not do anything until the dispensation of the law gave credence to the law, and the dispensation of the law gave support to the law, and the law took over the prevailing dispensation. The dispensation of the law is actually the period between when Moses was called, the instructions he received, the laws he received, and when Jesus had to be introduced into the system. So when you talk about the dispensation of the law, you are talking about from Moses to Jesus Christ. After the dispensation of the law, which is characterized by God giving a set of laws and rules to Moses and the people that he worked with, was another dispensation that was introduced, and that is the dispensation of grace. By the dispensation of grace, Jesus Christ has been introduced into the world, who comes with grace and truth. After the dispensation of grace, which we are all part of, and we recognize now, and we submit to, and our lives are guided by, is the dispensation of the kingdom age. So this dispensation of the kingdom age is the dispensation where most of us are waiting for to spend eternity. The dispensation of the law was characterized by God using certain proponents as the scribes, poets, prophets, and teachers to reveal his mind concerning creation and the people of the day at that time. Then the dispensation of the law gave way to the rise of the dispensation of grace. The dispensation of grace was characterized by Jesus Christ coming from God as God's substitute for mankind to handle the problem of man and to pay for the debt, the punishment, and the cruelty of man on this earth. This actually happened through the dispensation of innocence that gave way to conscience, and conscience gave way to human government, and human government gave way to the dispensation of promise, and the dispensation of promise then gave way to the dispensation of the law, and after the law, Jesus comes, and the dispensation of promise becomes relevant. All these 6 dispensations that I have mentioned are very, very relevant to or for the study of the Bible as a science. After the dispensation of grace, we are expecting another dispensation which the Bible talks about, or the Bible teaches, and is known as the dispensation of the kingdom age, or the dispensation of final things. In this dispensation, we have a characteristics of Jesus coming back after his departure, and then selecting a crop of those that have followed him faithfully, and then taking them to going to spend quality time together through brainwashing and through discipleship. The dispensation of the kingdom age actually introduces us to the dispensation where God sits down and receives from every faithful person what he has earned by virtue of his faith and by virtue of his lifestyle. The dispensation of the kingdom age actually gives credence to no other dispensation until we are able to know so. The Bible as a complete book addresses a few things that we must not allow to go down the drain if we want to be good teachers who can explain the Bible. And I state them as follows. The Bible talks about perfection. The Bible talks about imperfection. The Bible talks about the fall of man. And the Bible talks about the remedy of God for the fall of man. The Bible talks about the readiness of man to accept God's remedy for the fall of man. So you have perfection, you have the fall of man, you have God's mercy or God's remedy, you have the law and the prophets, and then you have grace. The dispensation of the kingdom age actually brings us to a place where many things are not clearly defined. There are certain concepts that you and I have to be familiar with in considering these various dispensations, from innocence to perfection, or from innocence to the kingdom age, that runs through all in terms of the characteristics. Perfection was a period of innocence. The fall of man was a period of conscience. It runs through the dispensation of human government and runs through to the dispensation of promise, the law, and grace. Now, grace, or the dispensation of grace, reveals God's remedy for mankind's weaknesses and ills. Within these patterns of the dispensations, we find the law and the prophets, grace, and salvation presented through the doctrine of the Bible. Now let us look at ways that we can apply the Bible in our contemporary world. The sociologists and the anthropologists tell us that man evolves. Man has traveled over a period of a timeline. The period when man lived in the dark ages, the man was introduced to the Iron Age, and then man was introduced to enlightenment, and then man comes into the modern age, and now man is in the postmodern age. So when we look at these timelines of the evolution of man, not the theory of evolution, but the transformation, the growth, and the development process of mankind, we see that there are certain vital concepts and ideologies that need to be addressed as far as these characteristics are concerned. How does the Bible apply to our contemporary age? Now, please understand me that this contemporary age that we are in is the age that is known as the post-modern age. I will advise that you take time and study or read around anthropology, evolution, and sociology. In this postmodern age, a few characteristics about the postmodern man. The postmodern man finds himself in a dispensation which is still under grace, where information is always available, very less expensive, very accessible, technology being the tool upon which knowledge and information is carried about, and yet man or the being is very ignorant. The postmodern age is characterized by an age where man has access to all information through technology, through innovation, through creativity, advancement in the knowledge that is made available around us, and yet man is woefully ill-equipped, man is defunct with resources, and man, by and large, is very ignorant. This dispensation is the dispensation where man has access to a lot of knowledge and information, and yet cares a hoot or does not care a hoot about the information that is available. The Bible clearly states in different portions of the Bible that in the last days, knowledge will be abundant. It says, as water covers the face of the earth, so will knowledge display the glory of God. There's a portion of the Bible that talks about the fact that in the last days, knowledge shall become the stability of the times. That is why we see a lot of scientific innovations. We see a lot of technological innovations, a lot of technological creativity, advancement, and man-made search and researches that keeps on informing man's doubt and shaving off man's ignorance so that man can come to grasp that which knowledge has not been able to afford. The Bible, as a book that addresses history, culture, geography, knowledge, spirituality, also completely addresses knowledge and the contemporary age. For reference, one can read Isaiah chapter 2 from the verse number 1 to 4, and Micah chapter 4 from the verse number 1 to 4. You will see these two prophets who did not live in the same time span addressing the prophetic updates of the Bible in terms of the timeline that we find ourselves in. The contemporary age, which I will define in philosophy as the postmodern age, has these characteristics. We are in an age where smartness is something that keeps evolving and keeps changing. In the field of informatics, in the field of the study of genetics, we see a lot of researches going on by experts and proponents who seek to address the problems of mankind through findings and discoveries around nature. Many people, by their findings and by their postulations and theories, are even trying to disprove the existence of a supreme being who may have been directly or indirectly responsible for the creation that we find ourselves in. The postmodern world presents a big case for the Christian's Bible. For your information, please take time and study around the Bible in terms of SWOT analysis. When I talk about SWOT analysis in relation to the Bible, we are talking about looking at the Bible, focusing on its strengths, its weaknesses, its opportunities, and the threats around the Bible. The Bible as a cultural book, what are its strengths? The Bible as a geographical book, what are its weaknesses? The Bible as a spiritual book, what are its opportunities and then the threats that it poses to human nature and society, and what are the threats that human nature and society also pose on the Bible. When we look at the Bible as a unit, we should be able to address the Bible in the area where we have no doubt or no inconsiderations that gives allowance for people to doubt the Bible. When you look into the Bible, there are certain philosophical subjects or broad headings that the Bible specifically addresses. I would like to take you through a few and then encourage you to study the rest on your own. First, the Bible as a cultural book, a spiritual book, a geographical book, and a history book addresses issues around morality. The issues around morality are thoroughly addressed and thoroughly discussed by the authority of the Bible. In the field of epistemology, which is the science that studies knowledge, or the science that focuses on the study of knowledge, you come to points where you have subjects that are of concern, like free will and predestination. Like free will and predestination. Does the Bible have any discourse on free will? Does the Bible have any discourse on predestination? The Bible has keen authority and interest on presenting issues and matters surrounding morality. What is morality? Morality is the science or the field that investigates things by behaviors of beings being right or wrong. When you look at the Bible in relation to morality, you will come to a point where you discover that the Bible has so many areas of concern where clear findings or clear rules and regulations are stated on what morality is all about. The Bible as an authority book addresses godliness as opposed to morality. So if the Bible can become relevant for our contemporary age or this our contemporary setting, we must understand that the Bible is not seen as its origin or source as the book of morality, but it is seen as its origin and source as the book on godliness. Investigations in the Bible shows that there are many habits, characters, actions, and attitudes that actually may not be moral or morally justifiable, but may be godly justifiable. We find in the Bible a God saying that he hates murder. We should not kill, as one of the instructions and the laws given under the dispensation of law, and yet he will move a people group from one society to go and fight another people group in another society to kill them. There are instances of God instructing that a whole generation should be wiped out so that they have no continuity as far as God is concerned. So the Bible addresses morality. Now, under morality, there are so many subjects. A few I want to consider are moral relativism, moral selectivism, moral absolutism, moral ebionism, moral docetism, and moral formalism. I think that today's lecture focuses more on the philosophical, geographical, cultural, spiritual dimensions of the Bible in relations to our day-to-day life. What is moral selectivism? Moral selectivism is the science or the study that says that anything that happens is relative. So, for example, let's say some robbers invade a place, and then the people that are found in the place by the robbers, being asked by the robbers to give them their belongings. But these people, instead of submitting their belongings, they decide to resist the force of the robbers. And then, in that instance, causing commotion, disagreement, and fights. And then, as a matter of defense, maybe the people that the robbers have come to rob, they end up overpowering, wounding, or killing the robbers. Moral selectivism or moral relativism states that in that instance, by the authority of the interpretation of the law and jurisprudence, one cannot state that it is wrong or totally wrong or absolutely wrong for the people that were robbed or were invaded to have killed the robbers as a matter of wrongness. The substance of the case would have to be weighed by the expert to ascertain the gravity of the information and evidence to prove whether the incident is one that allows the justification of right or wrong by a conduct. So our contemporary world is a very shaky one because it focuses more on relativism. It focuses more on selectivism. It focuses more on opinions that everyone may be right depending on where he or she may be coming from. What is the Bible's justification or place on such a concept? The Bible, however, being a book of morals, is the book that also focuses more on absolutism. The Bible is the book that gives information on an incident or an occurrence or an event or happening being absolutely wrong or being absolutely right. There cannot be anything like in between wrong and right, or a bit of wrong and a bit of right, as far as the authority of the Bible is concerned. So the Bible can be applied in our context, in our contemporary world, by we focusing more on the absolutism of what the doctrine of the Bible stipulates. How do we apply the Bible in our contemporary world? Well, to be able to apply what the Bible says and the content of the Bible in relation to our contemporary world, we must understand that the Bible is a history book. It's a book of culture. It's a book of socialization. It's a book that inculcates language. It's a book that looks at timelines. It's a book that looks at spirituality. And bundling all these factors together gives us the background or the strength to be able to apply in the context of the contemporary age. Look in life, you will see that a lot of things are happening that the Bible has already addressed. Let's take, for example, the mountains of a culture. There are, among anthropological sociologists, an agreement or major agreement on the building blocks of a society being 7. Now, what are those building blocks of society? We have first on the list religion, family, education, politics, media, economy, and our form of arts. So you can box entertainment and arts under one, sports under another, the media under another, education, politics, religion, and economy or finance. These 7 building blocks of society cut across the factors or pillars that contribute to the building of every society you find around. Now, what is the take of the Bible on these 7 stands? According to the prophecy of the prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 2, the verse number 1 to 4, and Micah chapter 4, from the verse 1 to 4, he says, and I'm paraphrasing, in the last days, all other mountains shall say, let us come together and go to the mountain of the Lord's house, where we shall be instructed in knowledge, in understanding, and we will be taught righteousness, and will be taught the ways of our God. There we shall be empowered to become great and be able to control every other mountain that is around. This is what the Bible has said. How do we apply this in the context of our contemporary world? Now, our contemporary world is broken into these 7 phases and these 7 pillars that I have enumerated to you. What does the Bible say about religion? What does the Bible say about education? What does the Bible say about politics? What does the Bible say about media? What does the Bible say about our arts? What does the Bible say? What does the Bible say about our market system, our economic system? And what does the Bible say about our political systems? The Bible, however, is very clear on all these building blocks of society. If we can apply the Bible in our day-to-day affairs and in our day-to-day living or livelihood, then we need to be able to approach the Bible from the background that I have enumerated even to you. To be able to apply the Bible specifically and clearly, we have to come to the point where we see the Bible from the background of historicity, culture, geography, and spirituality. And then considering the Bible through timelines, and then looking at the Bible with respect to what the Bible says on absolutism and relativism. Today, there are so many societies that do not subscribe to the absoluteness of the Bible. They will rather take a portion of the Bible and take a portion of another building block of society. I will indulge you to take time and read around the pillars or the building pillars of society. On this note, I will look at the role of scripture in life principles in our next lecture. I would therefore like for you to ask any question if you have. At this stage, if you have any question to ask, you can raise your hand by clicking on the participant on your screen and then clicking on raise your hand so you can ask your question. Please, so that we can hear you loud and clear, you can unmute your mic. And if you want us to see you, you can also unmute your video. Okay. So I can see that Galaxy J Star, that is Frederick, is ready to ask a question. Frederick, unmute your mic and then unmute your camera and then go ahead and ask your question. Okay, Fred.
Yeah, I want to ask this question. Is man a free moral agent?
Is man a free moral agent?
Or not?
Okay. The question you have asked is a very important question. It is a question about philosophy, sociology, religion, and anthropology, all boxed into one. Is man a free moral agent? No, man is not a free moral agent, because the Bible is very specific on the do's and the do nots that God has stated for man to follow. There are no loose guards. If God gives a specific instruction to man, man must obey the instruction that God has given to him as stipulated by the scriptures. And if man flouts the instructions that have been given, then it means that he must face the consequences and the punishment that follows it. So man cannot behave anyhow. Man cannot conduct himself anyhow. Man cannot believe in just anything, because the Bible is very clearly stated how man is supposed to conduct himself in the environment that he's been put. Now, having to say this, there are also certain authorities and domain or territories that God has placed man, so that man can freely move about and do things as expected by God without inhibitions and restrictions, and at the same time following the instructions that God has stated. A typical practical example can be seen in this way. Adam, I put you in a garden. You have everything you need. You can do anything you want. But there is one thing I do not want you to do. We see that very clearly stated in Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, and then we see the fall of man, which is basically hinging on man disobeying the instructions that God gave to him. And that made man's freedom stripped of him. So you will see that in the placement of God upon man, man is a free moral, spiritual, geographical, and cultural agent, but at the same time a limited and restricted agent. So on this note, I answer your question that man is not a free moral agent. You are welcome. Question. Okay, so on this note, we will bring our fourth lecture, which is the application of the Bible in the contemporary age, to an end. Please do further readings and further findings, and then you can ask appropriate questions in the recurrent lecture. Thank you very much for joining us on Seeking and Understanding the Truth program. Bye for now.